Greetings. Greetings to all and happy Friday. We're blessed to see the end of another week. Welcome to Storytime at 5 with Dr. Helen Tinsley. I'm going to start, as always, with two stories. Again, happy Friday. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine in the stories that I read every day. I hope everyone is doing well. I hope all the children are enjoying their time at home as much as they can. And I look forward to sharing every day story time with you. So today, the first story is a children's favorite called Henny Penny. Henny Penny. Henny Penny lived with her friends in a wonderful kingdom of forests, meadows, and ponds. It was as perfect a place as you could imagine, unless you were Henny Penny. One morning, Henny Penny was talking with her friend Ducky Lucky. The sun was shining and the sky was blue. Breezes played with the leaves of the trees. What a perfect day, said Ducky Lucky. Yes, said Henny Penny. I just hope it doesn't get too hot or too windy, or my goodness, what if it rains? Oh, that's the first picture. Ducky Lucky shook his head. You worry too much. Why don't you go look for something to eat? All right, sighed Henny Penny. I suppose I could hunt for some nice crunchy bugs. Okay, turn to bed. So, Henny Penny wandered down the road, picking and flicking and pecking and checking. Finally, she stopped under an old oak tree. Bugs and grubs were everywhere. These look tasty, said Henny Penny. I only hope I don't get sick from eating too much. Just then the wind puffed through the branches of the oak tree. It loosened an acorn. The acorn fell straight down and clunk! It hit Henny Penny on the head. Ouch, cried Henny Penny. What was that? She looked around but didn't see anything. My goodness! The sky must be falling. I must go and tell the king. Henny Penny fluttered back down the road. Soon she passed the pond where her friend was still swimming. What's wrong? Asked Ducky Lucky. Henny Penny didn't even stop. The sky is falling. The sky is falling. I must go and tell the king. Are you sure? Asked Ducky Lucky. I remember when you lost a feather and thought your wing was coming off. Look at this bump on my head, said Henny Penny. I tell you the sky is falling. Then I will come with you, said Ducky Lucky, and he jumped out of the pond. Soon they came upon Turkey Lurkey, who was gobbling berries from a bush. What's the matter? He asked. Why are you running? The sky is falling, cried Henny Penny and Ducky Lucky. We must go and tell the king. Are you sure? Asked Turkey Lurkey. I remember when you... Ducky Lucky believes me, said Henny Penny. Besides, look at this bump on my head. Well, said Turkey Lurkey, if you have a bump and Ducky Lucky believes you, then it must be true. He spit out the berries and joined them. Next, they saw Goosey Lucy arranging some twigs in her nest. "What's the matter?" she cried. "Why are you running?" "The sky is falling," cried Henny Penny, Ducky Lucky, and Turkey Lurkey. "We must go and tell the king." "Are you sure?" asked Goosey Lucy. "I remember." "Look at this bump on my head," said Henny Penny. "I tell you the sky is falling." "Well," said Goosey Lucy, "if you have a bump and Ducky Lucky believes you and Turkey Lurkey has joined you, then it must be true." And she began waddling beside them as fast as she could. Oh, excuse me. The four friends were nearing the forest. Cocky Locky was roosting on a tree branch practicing his crow. "What's the matter?" he asked. "Why are you running?" "The sky is falling," cried Henny Penny, Ducky Lucky, Turkey Lurkey, and Goosey Lucy. "We must go and tell the king." "Are you sure?" asked Cocky Locky. "Look at this bump on my head," said Henny Penny. "The sky is definitely falling." "Well," said Cocky Locky, "if you have a bump, and Ducky Lucky believes you, and Turkey Lurkey has joined you, and Goosey Lucy says it's so, then it must be true." And he fluttered down from the branch. Now the five friends hurried into the forest. They had gone only a little way when Foxy Loxy stepped out from a cluster of trees. "Oh my," he said, "you all look so distressed. Whatever is the matter?" "The sky is falling," cried Henny Penny, Ducky Lucky, Turkey Lurkey, Goosey Lucy, and Cocky Locky. "We must go and tell the king." "Why, of course you must," said Foxy Loxy. "Listen, my friends, I know the king well, and I also know a shortcut to the palace. So follow me. There isn't a moment to lose." The fox had led them further into the woods down a twisty turning trail. "Are we almost there?" asked Henny Penny. "Almost," said Foxy Loxy, "but oh dear, you all look so tired. Should we stop at my den for a moment? You can meet my family and rest for a while." "Yes, please," said Henny Penny, Ducky Lucky, Turkey Lurkey, Goosey Lucy, and Cocky Locky. You know, foxes are very, very slick. "Right this way," said Foxy Loxy. As they walked, he told them about his lovely wife, Roxy Loxy, and he told them about the four little Loxies, Moxie, Soxy, Poxy, and Doxy. What he didn't tell them was that all five were sitting around the dining table waiting for Foxy Loxy to bring home dinner. "Well, here we are," said Foxy Loxy, stopping in front of a low rock hedge. He bowed and waved his arm toward a dark opening underneath. And Henny Penny, Ducky Lucky, Turkey Lurkey, Goosey Lucy, and Cocky Locky all marched down into the fox's den. Now, two things didn't happen after that. The sky didn't fall, and no one met with the king, but Foxy Loxy's family still talk about the wonderful feast that they had that day. And that's the end of Henny Penny. Greetings to those that joined me. Hi, Val and Olivia. Hi, Catherine. And hi, Aunt Carol. I hope more people watch the videos than perhaps might be logged on. So happy Friday to everyone. And our second book is one of my favorite authors is Richard Wright. And it's a story about Richard Wright, and it's called Richard Wright and the Library Card. And the author is William Miller. And actually, I autographed this book to my son, 23 years ago. I put to Hassan, remember reading is the doorway to freedom. Happy Kwanzaa, 1997. Look at that. It's autographed to my son. And I still have the book. The dedication says, for my son Julian, books are the road to the promised land. Richard loved the sound of words. He loved the stories his mother told about the farm where she grew up. There was a willow tree by a bend in the road, she explained. I dreamed all my girl dreams down there. Richard loved to hear his grandfather talk about the war, how he ran away from his master and fought the rebel army. I was only a boy, his grandfather said proudly, but I fought as well as any man. I fought in the rain and the mud. I carried the flag at the head of the troops. Richard loved to read stories on his own, but his family was very poor. They moved often looking for work in different towns and cities. His father cleaned office buildings. His mother cooked in the kitchens of wealthy white people. Richard had little chance to go to school. His mother taught him when she could, reading the funny papers out loud, sounding each word carefully. When Richard finally learned to read, he couldn't buy or borrow the books he wanted so badly. Books were expensive. The doors of the library were shut against him because he was black. So Richard read whatever he could find, old newspapers, books without covers pulled from ash cans. When Richard was 17, he caught a bus to Memphis. He hoped to find work, enough money to move to Chicago where he would make a new life for himself in the North. Richard walked the hot streets looking for a job that would be his ticket to freedom. He saw many young men like himself searching for the same job, the same way out. He finally found a place in an optician's office. He polished eyeglasses, swept the floors, and ran errands for the white men. As long as he kept his head down, as long as he began every sentence with "Sir," Richard was safe. At night, Richard returned to the boarding house where he had rented a room. To save money, he ate beans from the can, warmed by water from the tap. Listening to the noise of the street below his window, Richard felt a familiar hunger for words. There were thousands of books in the public library, but only white people could get a card, could take them out. But Richard had an idea. At night, he looked around the office trying to find one man who might understand his hunger for books. For the most part, they were like so many white men he had known before. They would never understand a black boy who wanted a library card, a black boy who wanted to read books even they didn't read. Only one man seemed different from the others. Jim Falk kept to himself, and the other men ignored him as they ignored Richard. Several times, Richard had been sent to the library to check out books for him. One day, when the other men were out to lunch and Jim was eating alone at his desk, Richard approached him. I need your help, Richard said. Are you in some kind of trouble? Jim asked with a suspicious look. I want to read books. I want to use the library, but I can't get a card, Richard said, hoping Jim would not laugh in his face. What do you want to read? Jim asked cautiously. Novels? Plays? History? Richard felt confused. His mind was racing so fast he couldn't think of a single book. Jim said nothing but reached into his desk and brought up a worn white card. He handed it to Richard. "How will you use it?" Jim asked. "I'll write a note," Richard said, "like the ones you wrote when I got books for you." "All right," Jim said nervously, "but don't tell anyone else. I don't want to get into trouble." "No, sir," Richard promised. "I'll be careful." After work, Richard walked through the crowded streets to the library. He felt as if he were on a train to Chicago, as if he were traveling north already. But when Richard walked through the door, he felt the old fear again. Many heads were raised at the sight of a black boy in the library. Richard kept his eyes down, not looking up until he stood before the checkout desk. The librarian put on her glasses to make sure she wasn't seeing things. Richard handed her the note he had written and stepped back. "Why can't Mr. Falk get his own book?" she asked sharply. "He's very busy," Richard replied, his legs trembling. "All right," the woman said, "but you tell Mr. Falk I'd rather see him in person the next time." Richard roamed the stacks, unable to believe there were this many books in the world. He touched the leather spines and fingered the pages he had dreamed about for such a long time. "Are you sure these books aren't for you?" the librarian asked in a loud voice when he went to check them out. Once again, heads turned, and Richard felt the eyes of white people on him. He thought he had been caught, that he would never be able to read the books he wanted so badly. But Richard told the lady what she wanted to hear, what she believed was true about all black boys like him. "No, ma'am," he said. "These books aren't for me. Heck, I can't even read." The librarian laughed out loud and stamped his books. Richard heard other people laugh as he walked out the door. That night in his room, Richard read until the sun dimmed the electric light. He read the words of Dickens, Tolstoy, and Stephen Crane. He read about people who had suffered as he had, even though their skin was white. They longed for the same freedom Richard had spent his life trying to find. With the light of the sun coming through the window, Richard put down the book. He felt sleepy, but the words he had read echoed in his ears, colored everything he saw. He wondered if he would act differently, if others would see how the books had changed him. Richard knew he would never be the same again. That morning, he carried his books to work in a newspaper. Whenever he had a chance, whenever the office was empty for a moment, he read. Mr. Falk walked over, pretending he was asking Richard to go and pick up his laundry for him. "What'd you get?" he asked, under his breath. Richard opened the newspaper and showed him. Jim seemed shocked at first, but then a smile came over his face. "Those are powerful books, Richard," he said. "Those books will stay with you for the rest of your life. But for now," he said, looking around the office, "you should keep them to yourself." Richard tried to do just that, but as the time for the journey north came closer, he didn't care who saw him reading. The men in the office either laughed at him or asked him if he was crazy. "What's a colored boy like you toting a bag full of books around for? Your head can't hold all them big words." Every now and then, Jim smiled at him from across the room. The library books had changed some of Richard's feelings about white people. Richard still feared them, but he understood them better. The day he left for Chicago, Richard stopped by Mr. Falk's desk. "Thank you," Richard said. "Thank you for the books. Thank you for everything. Jim didn't say a word, but he shook Richard's hand in front of everybody. On the train going north, flying across the open fields, Richard remembered the books he had read. The words came back to him, the stories more real than the train itself. Every page was a ticket to freedom, to the place where he would always be free. And that, my dear children, is the end. I just want to share with you, Richard Wright is was a very famous writer. He wrote Native Son. He wrote the book Black Boy. He wound up moving out of the United States and living in France, which is where he died. But to those watching, libraries are so important. Books are so important. And libraries are a place to house books. So for me, when I was a little girl, I fell in love with books at the Inglewood Public Library. I used to go get all the Beatrix Potter books, and they were little small books, and I would put them under my bed at night and sleep with them. In fact, one pause, I want to show you something. Oh, I thought I had them handy. I do. Those little books that I fell in love with, I'm sorry, I had to show. The books I fell in love with were these little books. The Tale of Jemima Puddle Duck by Beatrix Potter. The Tale of Benjamin Bunny. Those little books opened up a world of reading to me. And reading is power. No matter what you want to know in life, you can find it in a book. So I hope that you enjoy these stories, and I hope that they motivate you every day to read and read and read some more. Okay? I want to say thank you to those that are watching and listening, and I hope you enjoyed the story. Have a safe day. Have a safe weekend. It's beautiful out here in New Jersey. I went for a walk in my neighborhood by myself to just take in the fresh air and get some sunshine and vitamin D. And I encourage you to do the same as long as you can keep your distance from people. So stay well, and I will see you tomorrow. Same time, same place. God bless. Peace.